17-year-old Maya had been living in Richard's mansion for only 3 weeks when she noticed something the adults had missed. While dusting the library, a job she'd volunteered for to avoid awkward dinner conversations, her cloth caught the edge of the oil painting's frame. The massive portrait of Richard's late father shifted slightly, revealing a thin line of darkness behind it. Maya froze, her heart hammering. She glanced toward the doorway, where Richard's fiancée Victoria often appeared without warning, always with that practiced smile and questions about Maya's adjustment to her new home. The house felt different when Victoria was around, like the walls themselves were listening. Later that evening, as Richard reviewed business papers and Victoria prepared her nightly tea ritual, Maya approached with trembling hands. Her voice came out barely above a whisper, the way it always did when she was scared. "Richard," she said, tugging gently at his sleeve. "There's a door behind the painting in the library." Victoria's teacup clinked against its saucer. Richard looked up, his expression patient but distracted. "What's that, sweetheart?" "The big painting of your father," Maya continued, her words careful and quiet. "It moves. There's something behind it." Victoria laughed softly, a sound like wind chimes in a storm. "Oh, Maya, you have such an imagination." "Richard, didn't I tell you she'd need time to feel comfortable in such a big house? All those shadows and creaky sounds. It's overwhelming for a girl her age." But Maya had seen the way Victoria's smile faltered for just a moment, and she'd seen something else. Something that made her stomach twist with the same sick feeling she'd had in her last foster home. Right before everything fell apart, Richard's attention had already drifted back to his papers. "Maybe we should get you some books about the house's history, Maya. Lots of old homes have interesting architectural features." Maya nodded silently, her cheeks burning with familiar shame. The adults had decided, without really listening, that her discovery was just a scared girl's imagination. But Maya knew what she'd seen. The painting had moved. There was darkness behind it, waiting. As Victoria cleared the tea service, her movements were too careful, too controlled. Maya watched her guardian's fiancé through lowered lashes, memorizing every detail. Something was wrong in this house, and Maya was the only one who seemed to notice. Maya's single suitcase had contained everything she owned when she'd arrived at Richard Blackwood's estate 3 weeks ago. The social worker, Ms. Rodriguez, had carried it to the front door herself, a gesture that felt both kind and pitying. Maya had learned to pack light during her 7 years in the system. Possessions were easily lost, broken, or left behind when placements ended. "This is it, Maya," Ms. Rodriguez had said, her voice artificially bright. "Mr. Blackwood is excited to meet you." The mansion's front door had seemed impossibly tall, its brass knocker shaped like a lion's head. Maya had stood on the marble steps, her suitcase handle cutting into her palm, and wondered how long this placement would last. 3 months? 6, if she was lucky? Richard had answered the door himself, surprising both Maya and Ms. Rodriguez. He was younger than she'd expected, maybe late 30s, with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. His handshake was gentle, his smile genuine but nervous. "Maya, welcome home," he'd said, then immediately looked embarrassed by his own words. "I mean, welcome to our home. Your home, if you'd like it to be." Victoria had appeared in the doorway, like a vision from a magazine. Her blonde hair perfectly styled, her dress expensive and elegant. Her smile was wider than Richard's, more practiced. "Oh, Maya, you're even prettier than your photos. Come in, darling. Let me show you around." Maya had followed them through rooms that seemed too large, too pristine. The furniture looked like it belonged in a museum, not a home where people actually lived. Victoria had chattered constantly about the house's history, the garden parties she was planning, the wonderful schools in the area. Richard had walked slightly behind them, his hands shoved in his pockets, occasionally adding quiet comments about practical things like the Wi-Fi password and laundry day. "And this will be your room," Victoria had announced, throwing open a door to reveal a space larger than most of the apartments Maya had lived in. The bed was covered in a white comforter, fluffy pillows arranged with department store precision. Fresh flowers sat on the knit-stand yellow roses that smelled like expensive perfume. Maya had stood in the doorway, overwhelmed. Her suitcase suddenly felt heavier, as if it were full of stones instead of her few belongings. "Thank you," she'd whispered, because she'd been taught to always say thank you, even when she wasn't sure what she was thanking people for. Richard had crouched down to her eye level, his voice gentle. "Maya, I know this is a big change. I want you to feel safe here. If you need anything at all, just ask, okay?" She'd nodded, though she'd learned long ago that asking for things usually led to disappointment. Adults said they wanted to help, but they rarely meant it when it became inconvenient. That first night, Maya had unpacked her suitcase, spreading her few possessions across the vast dresser. 3 shirts, 2 pairs of jeans, a worn copy of Jane Eyre, and a small notebook where she wrote down things she noticed, things adults usually missed. Maya had always been good at noticing patterns. It was a survival skill she'd developed early, reading the moods of foster parents, predicting when placements might end, understanding the unspoken rules of each new household. In Richard's mansion, she'd quickly learned Victoria's routines. Victoria kept a leather-bound planner, its pages filled with precise handwriting in purple ink. Maya had glimpsed it during breakfast on her 4th day, when Victoria left it open on the kitchen counter, while fetching her yogurt from the refrigerator. The schedule was obsessively detailed. 8 a.m. morning skincare routine, 8:30 a.m. breakfast with R&M, 9:15 a.m. gym, legs, 11 a.m. grocery shopping, Whole Foods, 2 p.m. hair appointment. But it was the evening entries that caught Maya's attention. Every Tuesday and Thursday, Victoria wrote simply, "Out, 7 p.m. Maya had started paying closer attention after that. On Tuesdays and Thursdays, Victoria would kiss Richard goodbye after dinner, claiming she was meeting her book club or attending a yoga class. She'd return around 10, her cheeks flushed, her eyes bright with an energy that seemed different from her usual controlled composure. "How was book club, darling?" Richard would ask, not looking up from his laptop. "Wonderful," Victoria would reply, her voice smooth as silk. "We discussed the most fascinating chapter tonight." But Maya noticed things. Victoria's book club apparently never assigned actual books. She never carried one, never mentioned titles or authors. Her yoga mat stayed pristine in the hall closet, its price tag still attached. And on those Tuesday and Thursday evenings, Richard seemed to work later than usual, as if he'd been encouraged to stay busy. Mrs. Chun, the housekeeper, had worked for Richard for 5 years, since before Victoria's arrival. She was a small woman, in her 60s, with gentle eyes and quick, efficient movements. Maya had started spending time in the kitchen, helping with small tasks, because Mrs. Chun never asked too many questions or tried too hard to make conversation. "Mrs. Chun," Maya had ventured one Thursday morning, "does Victoria really go to book club?" Mrs. Chun had paused in her vegetable chopping, her knife hovering over a carrot. "Why do you ask, little one? She never talks about books, and she leaves her book club books here." Mrs. Chun's expression had grown thoughtful. "Some people," she'd said carefully, "like to keep their activities private." But Maya had seen something in the older woman's eyes, a flicker of unease that matched her own growing suspicions. Mrs. Chun had been watching Victoria too. That Thursday evening, Maya positioned herself in the upstairs hallway, where she could see the front door through the banister railings. Victoria emerged from the powder room at exactly 7, checking her reflection in the hallway mirror. She wasn't dressed for book club. Her outfit was too sleek, too deliberately attractive. Her phone buzzed, and she answered it immediately. "I'm leaving now," she'd said in a voice Maya had never heard before, lower, more intimate. "Yes, he's working late again." Perfect timing. Maya had pressed herself against the wall, her heart racing. When Victoria left, her heels clicked against the marble foyer with purpose, confidence. This wasn't someone going to discuss literature with friends. This was someone with secrets. From that night forward, Maya began documenting everything in her notebook, creating her own detailed schedule of Victoria's patterns. She sensed she was gathering pieces of a puzzle, though she couldn't yet see the complete picture. Maya waited until the following Tuesday, when Victoria left for her mysterious evening appointment, and Richard was locked in his study with quarterly reports. The mansion felt different at night, larger, more shadowy, full of creaks and whispers. That daylight normally masked, she made her way to the library, her bare feet silent on the Persian rugs. The portrait of Richard's father loomed in the darkness, its painted eyes seeming to follow her movement. Maya had studied it carefully over the past week, memorizing every detail of the ornate frame, the way it hung slightly off-center, the small gap she'd noticed where the wall met the frame's edge. Her fingers found the right side of the frame and pushed gently. The painting swung inward like a door, revealing a space she hadn't expected. Instead of a simple hiding place, there was an actual room, small, cramped, but clearly functional. Maya fumbled for her phone's flashlight, its beam illuminating a space that made her stomach drop. The walls were covered with monitors, their screens dark but still humming with electrical life. Cables snaked across the floor, connecting to devices she didn't recognize. A small desk held notebooks, hard drives, and what looked like recording equipment. But it was the photographs that made her blood run cold. Pictures of Richard, dozens of them, taken from angles that suggested they'd been captured without his knowledge. Richard at his office, Richard at restaurants, Richard meeting with people Maya didn't recognize. Some photos had been taken through windows. Others seemed to be from hidden cameras in public spaces. Maya's hands shook as she examined the notebooks. The handwriting was Victoria's, but the content was nothing like her cheerful daily planner. These pages contained detailed observations about Richard's business meetings, his phone calls, even his moods and habits. Names, dates, dollar amounts, all meticulously recorded. One entry made Maya's breath catch. R mentioned the Morrison deal again. Thinks he's being cautious, but he's actually predictable. Target price point confirmed at $2.3 million. Contact will be pleased. Maya didn't understand all the business terminology, but she understood enough. Victoria was spying on Richard, documenting his private business dealings and sharing information with someone else. The woman who kissed him goodnight and planned their wedding was betraying him in the most intimate way possible. Maya photographed everything she could with her phone, her hands trembling as she tried to capture clear images of the notebooks, the photos, the equipment. She was so focused on gathering evidence that she almost missed the sound of Victoria's car pulling into the driveway. Panic shot through her like electricity. Victoria was returning early. Maya quickly turned off her phone's light and tried to navigate the dark room by memory. She'd been inside for maybe 10 minutes, but it felt like hours. Her knee knocked against the desk, sending something clattering to the floor, a small brass key that must have been hidden among the papers. Without thinking, Maya grabbed the key and shoved it into her pajama pocket. She pushed the painting back into place just as she heard Victoria's heels on the front stairs. Maya ran to the library door, peeked out to make sure the hallway was empty, then sprinted barefoot to the back staircase. She made it to her room just as she heard Victoria's voice calling out, "Richard, I'm home early. Book club was canceled." Maya dove under her covers, her heart pounding so hard she was sure it could be heard through the walls. The brass key pressed against her leg through her pocket, warm and solid proof that what she'd discovered was real. In the darkness of her bedroom, Maya stared at the ceiling and tried to process what she'd learned. Victoria wasn't just keeping secrets from Richard. She was actively working against him, using their relationship as a cover for something that looked very much like corporate espionage. The question was, what could a 17-year-old foster kid possibly do about it? Maya spent Wednesday morning rehearsing what she would say to Richard. She practiced in front of her bedroom mirror, trying to find words that would make him listen, really listen. Instead of dismissing her concerns the way adults always did, she found him in his home office after lunch, surrounded by business cards, scattered across his mahogany desk like fallen leaves. His company, Blackwood Industries, apparently dealt with dozens of potential partners and investors. Maya recognized some of the names from Victoria's secret notebooks. "Richard?" Maya knocked softly on the doorframe. "Can I talk to you about something important?" He looked up from his computer, his expression kind but distracted. "Of course, sweetheart. What's on your mind?" Maya took a deep breath. "It's about Victoria. I think she's—" "Maya!" Victoria's voice cut through the air like a blade. She appeared in the doorway, her smile bright and sharp. "There you are. I was looking for you." Maya's prepared words died in her throat. Victoria moved into the office with predatory grace, positioning herself between Maya and Richard. "Richard, darling, I've been thinking about what we discussed earlier. About Maya's adjustment period. Victoria's voice was honey-sweet, but her eyes never left Maya's face. Perhaps we should consider getting her some professional help, a therapist who specializes in trauma and transition. Professional help? Richard frowned, looking between them. Maya seems to be doing well. She's settling in, making herself at home. Oh, but there are signs, Victoria continued smoothly. The way she watches people, takes notes about everything. Yesterday, I caught her going through my planner. Isn't that right, Maya? Maya's cheeks burned. She hadn't been going through Victoria's planner. She'd simply seen it when Victoria left it open. But defending herself would sound like making excuses. And now she's come to you with some story about me, hasn't she? Victoria's laugh was musical and dismissive. Richard, this is classic behavior for children who've experienced multiple placement disruptions. They create traumatic scenarios, often targeting the newest adult in their environment. Richard's expression shifted, becoming more concerned and protective, but not of Maya. His protective instincts were being redirected toward Victoria, exactly as she'd intended. Maya, he said gently, I know this transition is hard. Maybe Victoria's right. Maybe talking to someone professional would help you feel more secure here. Maya stared at him, feeling the familiar weight of not being believed, not being heard. Her evidence was upstairs in her phone, but now seemed like the worst possible time to present it. Victoria had expertly positioned herself as the reasonable adult, making Maya look like a troubled child with an overactive imagination. I just wanted to help, Maya whispered. Of course you did, sweetheart, Victoria said, reaching out to pat Maya's shoulder. Maya flinched away from the touch. We all want to help you feel better. Maya nodded silently and retreated to her room, Victoria's brass key still hidden in her drawer, burning with the weight of secrets no one wanted to hear. Maya was helping Mrs. Chun prepare dinner when the older woman finally broke the careful silence they'd maintained for days. Maya had been chopping vegetables with methodical precision, her knife work improving under Mrs. Chun's patient guidance. When the housekeeper set down her wooden spoon and studied Maya's face. You look troubled, little one, Mrs. Chun said quietly. More troubled than when you first arrived. Maya paused in her chopping, unsure how much she could say. Mrs. Chun had been kind to her, treating her with the same gentle respect she showed everyone. But Maya had learned to be cautious about trusting adults with her concerns. Mrs. Chun moved to the kitchen island, pulling out her recipe book, a worn volume filled with handwritten notes in both Chinese and English. As she flipped through the pages, Maya noticed that some of the English notes were written in margins, almost like hidden messages within the formal recipes. My grandmother taught me, Mrs. Chun said, running her finger along a margin note, that sometimes the most important ingredients are the ones written small, easy to miss if you're not paying attention. Maya looked more closely at the book. Between recipes for dumplings and stir-fry, Mrs. Chun had documented other things, dates, observations, small details about household patterns. It was like Maya's own notebook, but disguised as something innocent. You notice things too, Maya said softly. Mrs. Chun nodded. When you clean someone's house for 5 years, you learn their rhythms. You know when something changes. She closed the recipe book and looked directly at Maya. Miss Victoria's rhythms had been unusual lately. Maya felt a flutter of hope. Someone else had noticed. Someone else was paying attention. She goes out on Tuesday and Thursday nights, Maya said carefully. Yes, and on those nights, Mr. Richard always works late. Such a coincidence. Mrs. Chun's tone was neutral, but her eyes were sharp. Also, I notice Miss Victoria asks many questions about Mr. Richard's work. More questions than a fiancé typically asks. Maya made a decision. She pulled out her phone and showed Mrs. Chun some of the photos she'd taken in the hidden room. The ones that clearly showed the surveillance equipment without revealing too much about how she'd obtained them. Mrs. Chun's expression grew grave as she studied the images. Where did you find this? Behind the painting in the library. There's a whole room back there. Maya's words tumbled out in a rush. Victoria has notebooks full of information about Richard's business deals. Pictures of him taken without his knowledge. She's spying on him, Mrs. Chun. She's selling his information to someone else. Mrs. Chun was quiet for a long moment, her weathered hands folded over her recipe book. When she finally spoke, her voice carried a weight Maya hadn't heard before. My daughter would be about your age now, she said quietly. If she had lived. Maya looked up, surprised by the shift in conversation. She died in a car accident when she was 7. My husband and we came to America afterward. Too many memories in our old home. Mrs. Chun's eyes glistened, but her voice remained steady. Mr. Richard hired me when I could barely speak English. He was patient, kind. He gave me a new family when mine was broken. Maya began to understand why Mrs. Chun was sharing this. I cannot let someone hurt him the way we were hurt, Mrs. Chun continued, and I cannot let them hurt you for trying to protect him. She reached across the counter and gently touched Maya's hand. My daughter, she was like you, quiet, careful, noticed everything. Adults didn't always listen to her either. Maya felt tears prick her eyes. For the first time since arriving at the mansion, she felt truly seen by an adult. We must be very careful, Mrs. Chun said. Miss Victoria is clever, dangerous, but together we can protect our family. She squeezed Maya's hand. Because that's what we are now? Yes, family. Real family watches out for each other. Maya nodded, no longer feeling alone in her discovery. Mrs. Chun opened her recipe book again, but this time she turned to a blank page in the back. Now, she said, picking up a pen, tell me everything you've observed, every detail. We will document it properly, and then we will decide how to help Mr. Richard see the truth. Mrs. Chun had suggested they search Victoria's room while she was at her Thursday night yoga class. Maya felt nervous about the deeper invasion of privacy, but Mrs. Chun's gentle determination convinced her they had no choice. Sometimes, Mrs. Chun had said, protecting someone requires uncomfortable actions. They waited until Victoria left at 7, her yoga mat conspicuously absent from her hands. Richard was safely locked in his study with his headphones on, reviewing architectural plans for a new office building. Mrs. Chun stood watch at the bottom of the stairs, while Maya slipped into Victoria's bedroom. The room was immaculate, like something from a design magazine. The bed was perfectly made, the dresser top arranged with expensive perfumes and jewelry. Maya felt like an intruder, but she forced herself to focus on finding proof of Victoria's deception. She started with the obvious places: the knitstand, the dresser drawers, the walk-in closet. Victoria's belongings were organized with military precision, but Maya found nothing unusual until she examined the antique writing desk by the window. The desk had several drawers, all of which opened easily, but Maya remembered the brass key she'd taken from the hidden room. On instinct, she examined the desk more carefully and found a small keyhole hidden behind a decorative panel at the bottom. The brass key fit perfectly. Behind the false panel was a laptop, sleek, expensive, and clearly not the one Victoria used openly around the house. Maya opened it, surprised to find it wasn't password protected. Victoria's confidence had made her careless. The desktop was filled with folders, labeled with corporate names Maya recognized from Richard's business cards. She opened one labeled Morrison Industries and found detailed financial documents, meeting schedules, and what appeared to be proprietary information about Richard's upcoming merger negotiations. But it was the email folder that made Maya's hands shake. Dozens of messages between Victoria and someone identified only as contact, discussing payment schedules, information delivery, and strategic timing for business sabotage. One email chain made Maya's stomach turn. Contact: the Morrison deal is worth $3.2 million to our clients if delayed until Q4. Can you ensure our proposal is submitted late? Victoria: easily managed. R trusts my suggestions completely. Will convince him to revise proposal multiple times. Payment as agreed. Contact: $50,000 transferred to your account. Pleasure doing business. Maya photographed everything she could, her phone's camera capturing screen after screen of evidence. The scope of Victoria's betrayal was staggering. She'd been systematically undermining Richard's business for months, maybe longer. She was so absorbed in documenting the evidence that she almost missed the sound of a car in the driveway. Maya quickly closed the laptop, locked the hidden compartment, and pocketed the brass key. She made it to the bedroom door just as she heard Victoria's voice downstairs. Richard, I'm back early. The instructor was sick. Maya slipped out of the room and up to her own floor, her heart pounding. In her bedroom, she immediately uploaded the photos to a cloud storage account Mrs. Chun had helped her create. The evidence was damning, but Maya knew they needed a plan for presenting it. It wouldn't be dismissed as the paranoid fantasies of a troubled teenager. The digital footprints were clear now. Victoria wasn't just unfaithful. She was a corporate spy, systematically destroying Richard's business while planning to marry him. Maya had never followed anyone before, but Mrs. Chun had insisted they needed concrete proof of Victoria's activities outside the house. Photos and documents can be questioned, she'd said, but if you witness her betrayal directly, Mr. Richard cannot dismiss what you've seen. The following Tuesday evening, Maya prepared carefully. She wore dark clothes, brought her phone with a full battery, and positioned herself in the garden where she could see Victoria leave without being spotted from the house windows. At exactly 7 o'clock, Victoria emerged from the mansion, dressed in a black cocktail dress that was definitely not book club attire. She checked her reflection in her phone screen, applied fresh lipstick, and walked to her silver BMW with the confidence of someone who believed she was unobserved. Maya followed on foot, staying far enough behind to avoid detection, but close enough to track Victoria's route. The woman drove to downtown, parking outside an upscale restaurant called Meridian that Maya recognized from Richard's business entertainment receipts. Maya positioned herself across the street, using a bus stop bench as cover. Through the restaurant's large windows, she could see Victoria being led to a corner table where a man was already waiting. He was middle-aged, well-dressed, with the kind of sharp features that suggested he was used to getting his way. Maya zoomed in with her phone, camera, and began taking photos. The man handed Victoria a manila envelope, which she quickly slipped into her purse. In return, she gave him what appeared to be a flash drive. Their conversation was intense, businesslike, completely unlike the social interaction Victoria claimed to have at book club. But it was when Maya saw Victoria pull out a second phone, one Maya had never seen her use at home, that the full scope of her deception became clear. Victoria answered the burner phone immediately, her posture changing to something more deferential. Maya couldn't hear the conversation from across the street, but she could see Victoria taking notes, nodding frequently, and occasionally glancing around the restaurant as if checking for surveillance. The call lasted nearly 10 minutes, after which Victoria returned her attention to the man across from her. They ordered drinks, but barely touched them. This was clearly a business meeting, not a social engagement. Maya documented everything, taking photos of their faces, the envelope exchange, the second phone, and even the restaurant's exterior, so the location could be verified. The meeting concluded around 8:30. Victoria kissed the man on both cheeks, a gesture that seemed European and formal rather than romantic, and they left separately. Maya waited until Victoria was in her car before starting the walk home, her mind racing with the implications of what she'd witnessed. Victoria was running a full espionage operation against Richard. The hidden room, the surveillance equipment, the secret meetings, it all pointed to a level of betrayal that went far beyond simple unfaithfulness. She was systematically destroying Richard's business relationships while pretending to love him. Maya made it home before Victoria, slipping in through the kitchen door where Mrs. Chun was waiting with worried eyes. "Did you find what we needed?" Mrs. Chun asked quietly. Maya showed her the photos on her phone. Mrs. Chun's expression grew grimmer with each image. "This is worse than we thought," Mrs. Chun murmured. "This is not just personal betrayal. This is criminal. What do we do now?" Maya asked. "Richard still doesn't believe me. He thinks I'm just a troubled kid making up stories." Mrs. Chun was quiet for a moment, studying the photos. "We need irrefutable proof. Something Victoria cannot explain away. Something Mr. Richard cannot dismiss." She looked at Maya with new determination. "I think it's time we set a trap." Maya felt a chill of fear and excitement. "What kind of trap?" "The kind that makes her reveal her true nature in front of Mr. Richard," Mrs. Chun said. "But it will be dangerous, Maya. If Victoria realizes we know her secrets, she may become desperate. Desperate people do unpredictable things." Maya thought about the hidden room, the secret meetings, the months of systematic betrayal. Richard deserved to know the truth, even if learning it would hurt him. "I'm not afraid," Maya said, and for the first time since discovering Victoria's deception, she realized it was true. She wasn't the frightened foster child who'd arrived with a single suitcase. She was someone who could fight for the people she loved. Mrs. Chun smiled proudly. "Then we begin planning tomorrow." Maya's composition notebook had become her lifeline, pages filled with careful observations, dates, times, and documented evidence of Victoria's betrayal. She'd transferred the most damning photos from her phone to printed copies, organizing everything in a way that would be impossible to dismiss as childish fantasy. Friday morning, she found Richard in the breakfast nook, reading the financial news on his tablet while drinking coffee. Victoria was at her standing hair appointment, giving Maya a window of privacy she desperately needed. "Richard," Maya said, settling into the chair across from him, "I need you to listen to me. Really listen. I have proof of what I've been trying to tell you." Richard looked up, his expression patient but slightly wary. Maya had learned to recognize that look the way adults prepared to humor a child's concerns while not taking them seriously. "Maya, if this is about Victoria again—" "It is about Victoria," Maya interrupted, her voice stronger than usual. "But it's also about your business, your safety, and people stealing from you." She opened her notebook and began laying out printed photos on the table. Pictures of the hidden surveillance room, screenshots of the incriminating emails, photos of Victoria's secret meeting at the restaurant. "These are from the room behind your father's portrait," Maya said. "Victoria has been spying on you for months. She's selling your business information to competitors." Richard's expression shifted from patience to confusion to growing alarm. As he studied the evidence, Maya watched his face carefully, seeing the moment when he began to understand the scope of what she was showing him. "Where did you get these?" he asked quietly. "I found the hidden room. I followed her to a meeting. I documented everything because I knew you wouldn't believe me without proof." Before Richard could respond, the front door opened and Victoria's voice echoed through the house. "Richard, I'm back early. The salon had a cancellation, so I'm gorgeous and available for whatever you need." Maya's heart sank. Victoria's timing was perfect, as always. Victoria appeared in the breakfast nook doorway, her smile radiant and her hair professionally styled. But her expression changed the moment she saw the photos spread across the table. "What's this?" she asked, moving closer with predatory grace. "Maya has been—" Richard began. "Maya has been what? Spying on me? Going through my personal belongings?" Victoria's voice remained controlled, but Maya caught the flash of fury in her eyes. "Richard, this is exactly what I was afraid of. This obsessive behavior is escalating." Maya watched Victoria's mask slip for just a moment, revealing something cold and calculating underneath. But she also saw something else fear. Victoria was afraid of being exposed. "Look at the photos," Maya said urgently. "Look at the evidence. She's been betraying you for months." Victoria's laugh was like breaking glass. "Evidence? Richard, she's obviously manipulated these images somehow. This is disturbing behavior that requires immediate intervention." Maya felt the familiar crushing weight of not being believed, but this time she refused to surrender. The evidence was real, and she would make them see it. Maya's room felt different that night. Small things had been moved. Her notebook shifted from the left side of her desk to the right. Her favorite pen cap left open, her phone charger unplugged and coiled differently than she'd left it. To most people, these would seem like insignificant details. But Maya had learned to notice everything. The threatening note appeared on her pillow the next morning, written in block letters on expensive stationery. "Curious children sometimes get hurt. Perhaps IT's time to find a new family." Maya stared at the paper, her hands trembling slightly. Victoria had been in her room while she slept, moving through the darkness like a predator. The message was clear: stop investigating or face consequences. But instead of fear, Maya felt a surge of anger. Victoria had underestimated her. Maya had survived 7 years in foster care, dealing with adults who ranged from neglectful to genuinely dangerous. A woman who hid behind fake smiles and manipulation tactics wasn't going to intimidate her into silence. Maya found Mrs. Chun in the laundry room, folding towels with mechanical precision. When Maya showed her the note, Mrs. Chun's face hardened in a way Maya had never seen before. "She came into your room," Mrs. Chun said, her voice deadly quiet. "While you were sleeping, she violated your safe space. She's trying to scare me into backing down," Maya said. "But Richard still doesn't fully believe the evidence. He thinks I might have fabricated some of it." Mrs. Chun set down the towel she'd been folding, her movements sharp with suppressed fury. "I received my own warning yesterday," she said. "Miss Victoria suggested that perhaps I was becoming too attached to you, that it might be healthier for everyone if I considered taking a position with another family." Maya felt a chill of panic. "She's trying to isolate me." If you leave, I am not leaving, Mrs. Chun said firmly. This is my home too. Mr. Richard is my family, and now you are my family. No one threatens my family. Over the following days, Victoria's psychological pressure campaign intensified. Maya's belongings continued to be subtly rearranged. Her internet access was mysteriously slow whenever she tried to research legal procedures for reporting corporate espionage. The house's security system malfunctioned one evening, leaving Maya's bedroom door unlocked all night a message that Victoria could access her anytime she wanted. Most disturbing was Victoria's behavior around Richard. She became more affectionate, more attentive, constantly touching his arm and gazing at him with adoring eyes. To an outside observer, she looked like a woman deeply in love. But Maya could see the performance in it, the way Victoria's expressions shifted when Richard wasn't looking directly at her. She's love-bombing him, Maya explained to Mrs. Chun as they prepared dinner together, making him feel so special and cherished that questioning her feels like betraying their relationship. Mrs. Chun nodded grimly. And she is positioning you as the threat to their happiness, making Mr. Richard choose between believing his troubled foster daughter or trusting his loving fiancé. Maya had researched enough about manipulation tactics to understand Victoria's strategy. By escalating her affectionate behavior while simultaneously painting Maya as unstable, Victoria was creating a narrative where believing Maya would require Richard to admit he'd been completely deceived by someone he loved. We need to force her to drop the mask, Maya said. Make her reveal her true nature in a way Richard can't rationalize or excuse. Mrs. Chun studied Maya's face carefully. That kind of plan puts you in direct danger. If Victoria realizes we're actively working against her, she may do more than leave threatening notes. Maya thought about the hidden surveillance room, the months of systematic betrayal, the way Victoria had invaded her bedroom while she slept. The woman who could orchestrate such elaborate deception was capable of far worse if cornered. I know, Maya said quietly, but if we don't stop her, she'd destroy Richard completely, and then she'd find a way to get rid of both of us anyway. Mrs. Chun's expression was troubled but determined. Then we must be very, very careful about how we spring our trap. Mrs. Chun's revelation came quietly, the way important truths often do. Maya was helping her prepare dumplings for dinner when the older woman pulled out an old photograph from her apron pocket. The image was faded, creased from years of handling, showing a young woman with Mrs. Chun's gentle eyes and a little girl with pigtails and a bright smile. This is my daughter, Lily, Mrs. Chun said softly. She would be 18 now, same age as you will be soon. Maya stopped her dumpling folding, recognizing the weight of what Mrs. Chun was sharing. In the weeks they'd worked together, Mrs. Chun had never mentioned having children. She was 7 when the accident happened, Mrs. Chun continued, her voice steady but distant. A drunk driver ran a red light. Lily was walking home from school, just 3 blocks from our house in San Francisco. I was making her favorite soup, planning to surprise her. Maya felt tears prick her eyes. She understood now why Mrs. Chun had seemed so protective of her from the beginning, why their bond had formed so naturally. My husband and I, we couldn't stay in that house afterward. Too many memories, too much pain. We sold everything and moved here to start over, but starting over doesn't mean forgetting. Mrs. Chun traced her finger along the photograph's edge. Mr. Richard hired me when I could barely speak English properly. When other employers looked at my grief and saw unreliability, he gave me purpose when I thought I had none left. Maya reached out and gently touched Mrs. Chun's hand. She was beautiful, she said, looking at the little girl in the photo. She was brave too, like you. Mrs. Chun smiled through her sadness. Lily always noticed things adults missed. She would come home from school with stories about which teachers were sad, which classmates needed friends, which adults weren't telling the truth. I used to tell her she was too observant for her own good. Maya understood the parallel Mrs. Chun was drawing. You see her in me, not just her. I see myself the mother I should have been, the protector I failed to be. Mrs. Chun's voice grew, stronger. I could not save my daughter from a drunk driver, but I can save you from a woman who means harm. I can save Mr. Richard from someone who pretends to love him while destroying his life. Mrs. Chun carefully tucked the photograph back into her apron. Victoria thinks she understands this household, but she does not understand what family means. Real family-chosen family fights for each other. We do not abandon each other when things become difficult. Maya felt a warmth spread through her chest, different from anything she'd experienced in foster care. This wasn't just an adult saying the right words because they were supposed to care for her. This was genuine love, fierce and protective, and unconditional. "I've never had someone fight for me before," Maya admitted quietly. "And I have never had the chance to fight for someone again," Mrs. Chun replied. "So we fight for each other. Yes, we protect our family." Maya nodded, feeling stronger than she had since discovering Victoria's betrayal. She wasn't alone in this battle. She had an ally who understood loss, who knew what it meant to lose everything and build a new life for nothing. "What do we do next?" Maya asked. Mrs. Chun's expression grew determined. "We show Victoria that she has underestimated both the quiet girl and the grieving woman. Sometimes that is a very dangerous mistake." Mrs. Chun's plan was elegant in its simplicity. She'd noticed that Victoria kept a small digital recorder in her purse, probably for documenting conversations with Richard that might contain useful business information. But recording devices could work both ways. "We need her to confess on camera," Mrs. Chun explained, as they sat in the kitchen after dinner, their voices low. "Not just admitting to spying, but threatening you directly. Something so clear that Mr. Richard cannot explain it away." Maya felt nervous about deliberately provoking Victoria, but she understood the necessity. Half measures and careful documentation hadn't worked. They needed irrefutable proof that would force Richard to see Victoria's true nature. Mrs. Chun had purchased a small hidden camera online, disguising the purchase among her regular household supply orders. The device was tiny, designed to look like a shirt button, with wireless capability to stream directly to her phone. "The hidden room behind the painting," Mrs. Chun said. "That's where we'll set the trap. You'll confront her there, surrounded by all her surveillance equipment. She won't be able to deny what she's doing, and the symbolism will be perfect for Mr. Richard to understand." Maya's role was to discover Victoria's next meeting time, then confront her in the hidden room while Mrs. Chun recorded everything from the library. Richard would be positioned to hear the confrontation naturally, without knowing he was part of a planned intervention. They spent 3 days preparing. Maya continued her careful observation of Victoria's patterns, noting that her next Tuesday meeting was scheduled for 7:30 later than usual, which suggested something important was happening. Mrs. Chun practiced operating the hidden camera, learning to position herself for optimal recording angles. The most difficult part was managing their own behavior around Victoria. They had to act normally while knowing they were planning to expose her criminal activities. Maya found herself studying Victoria's face during dinner conversations, searching for signs of genuine emotion beneath the performance. She found none. Tuesday evening arrived with an unseasonable chill. Victoria dressed more carefully than usual, choosing a black dress that was both elegant and practical, the kind of outfit suitable for important business meetings. Maya noticed she carried her larger purse, the one that could hold documents and recording devices. At 7 o'clock, Maya positioned herself in the library while Mrs. Chun remained in the kitchen, where she could monitor both the front door and Richard's study. Richard was reviewing contracts for a major deal scheduled to close Friday, information that Maya realized Victoria had probably already shared with her contacts. Victoria kissed Richard goodbye and left for her supposed book club meeting, but instead of driving away, Maya heard the car door slam in the driveway without the engine starting. Victoria was coming back inside. Maya's heart pounded as she heard footsteps on the marble foyer, then the soft sound of heels on carpet as Victoria moved toward the library. Maya quickly activated Mrs. Chun's recording app and slipped behind the portrait of Richard's father entering the hidden surveillance room. She didn't have long to wait. Victoria entered the room moments later, moving with confidence born of familiarity. She immediately began powering up the surveillance equipment, apparently planning to monitor Richard's evening activities. Before leaving for her actual meeting, Maya took a deep breath and stepped out from behind a filing cabinet, her phone held steady in recording position. "Hello, Victoria," she said quietly. Victoria spun around, her composure cracking for the first time since Maya had known her. For a moment, her face showed fury before the mask snapped back into place. "Maya," Victoria said, her voice honey-sweet, despite the dangerous glitter in her eyes. "What are you doing in here, sweetheart? This is a private space. I know what you're doing, Maya said, her voice steadier than she felt. I've been watching you, documenting everything. The surveillance, the meetings, the way you're stealing from Richard and selling his information. Victoria's smile became razor sharp. Oh, Maya, you have no idea what you're dealing with, but you're about to learn. Maya kept recording, knowing that Mrs. Chun was capturing everything from the library, knowing that Richard would soon hear exactly what kind of woman he'd planned to marry. Victoria's transformation was like watching a snake shed its skin. The loving fiancé disappeared completely, replaced by someone cold, calculating, and utterly without conscience. You stupid little girl, Victoria said, her voice dropping to a whisper that was more threatening than any shout. Do you have any idea how much money you're jeopardizing with your pathetic amateur detective work? Maya kept her phone steady, recording every word. I know you've been stealing Richard's business information for months. I know about your meetings downtown, your second phone, your secret computer. I know everything. Victoria laughed, the sound sharp and brittle in the confined space of the hidden room. You know nothing. You see puzzle pieces and think you understand the whole picture. She moved closer to Maya, her elegant exterior completely gone. This operation took me 2 years to set up. 2 years of playing the perfect girlfriend, enduring Richard's boring business talk, pretending to care about his pathetic attempts at building a family. Maya felt sick hearing Victoria's casual dismissal of Richard's genuine affection, but she forced herself to keep recording. This was exactly what they needed. Victoria revealing her true feelings without any possibility of misinterpretation. Richard loves you, Maya said. How can you just use him like this? Love? Victoria's expression was genuinely puzzled, as if Maya had spoken in a foreign language. Richard is a mark sweetheart, a very profitable mark. His company handles 14 major mergers this year alone, worth over $50 million in combined value. My clients pay handsomely for advance information about deal structures, timeline changes, and competing offers. Maya's stomach churned as Victoria continued her confession, apparently enjoying the opportunity to finally speak honestly about her schemes. The beautiful part, Victoria said, is that Richard makes it so easy. He actually trusts me with confidential information because he thinks I'm interested in his work. He shows me contracts, discusses strategy, even asks my opinion on major decisions. It's like he's paying me to rob him. You're destroying his life, Maya said, her voice shaking with anger. I'm building my retirement fund, Victoria corrected. Richard will recover. Rich men always do. But by the time he figures out what happened, I'll be living very comfortably in a country without extradition treaties. Maya heard footsteps in the library and knew Mrs. Chun was positioning herself for the next phase of their plan. Richard needed to hear this directly, not just see recordings later. You left threatening notes in my room, Maya said, keeping Victoria talking. You tried to intimidate me into staying quiet. Victoria's smile returned, sharp and predatory. Oh, sweetheart, those weren't threats. Those were warnings. I was being kind, giving you a chance to back down gracefully. She took another step closer to Maya. But since you've chosen to ignore my generosity, we'll have to handle this differently. Differently how? Maya asked, though she was afraid she already knew. Accidents happen to foster children all the time, Victoria said conversationally, especially troubled ones with histories of emotional instability. Sometimes they run away. Sometimes they hurt themselves. Sometimes they simply disappear, and everyone assumes they chose to leave rather than adjust to a new placement. Maya's blood ran cold, but she kept recording. Victoria was confessing to planning violence, possibly murder, with the casual tone someone might use to discuss weekend plans. And poor Richard, Victoria continued, he'll be so devastated by your disappearance, so guilty about failing to help another troubled child. He'll need comfort, support, someone to help him through his grief. That's when grieving men make their worst business decisions. That's when they become most vulnerable to manipulation. Maya realized with horrible clarity that Victoria had planned this scenario from the beginning. Maya wasn't just an inconvenient witness. She was a tool Victoria intended to use for psychological manipulation. You're insane, Maya whispered. I'm practical, Victoria corrected. And unfortunately for you, you've now heard too much to simply disappear quietly. We'll need a different approach. Victoria reached into her purse, and Maya saw something that made her heart stop. The glint of metal, small but unmistakably dangerous. "What are you doing?" Maya asked, backing against the surveillance equipment. "Ensuring that you never tell anyone what you've learned here tonight," Victoria said calmly. "Don't worry, sweetheart. I'll make sure Richard believes you were just a troubled child who couldn't handle the pressure of a new home. He'll blame himself, not me." Maya's phone captured everything: the threats, the confession, the casual discussion of violence. But more importantly, she heard what she'd been hoping for: Richard's voice in the library calling her name. "Maya, are you in there?" Mrs. Chun said she heard voices. Victoria's expression shifted to panic for the first time. She'd been so focused on Maya that she hadn't realized their conversation was audible from the library. "Not a word," Victoria hissed, her hand tightening around whatever she'd pulled from her purse. "Not one word, or both you and that old woman will disappear tonight." Maya looked directly into her phone's camera, knowing Mrs. Chun was recording everything, knowing Richard was about to discover exactly what kind of woman he'd planned to marry. "Richard," Maya called out, her voice stronger than she'd ever heard it, "I'm here, and I think you need to see this." Richard's appearance in the hidden room doorway created a moment of perfect silence. Maya watched his face as he took in the surveillance equipment, the scattered documents, and Victoria standing over Maya with something metallic glinting in her hand. His expression moved through confusion, disbelief, and finally, a kind of heartbroken understanding. "Victoria?" His voice was barely a whisper. "What is this place?" Victoria's transformation back to loving fiancée was instantaneous and chilling. The weapon, Maya could now see it was a small knife, disappeared into her purse as Victoria's smile returned. "Richard, darling, thank goodness you're here. Maya broke into your private office space, and I found her going through your confidential documents. I was just trying to keep her from damaging anything important." But Richard wasn't looking at Victoria. His eyes were fixed on the wall of monitors, the professional recording equipment, the detailed files with his name and photograph. Maya could see him processing the scope of what he was seeing, understanding that this wasn't something a teenager could have set up as a prank. "These are my business meetings," he said slowly, picking up a photograph of himself taken through a restaurant window. "Someone's been photographing me without my knowledge." "Richard," Maya said urgently, "she just confessed everything. She's been selling your business information for 2 years. She threatened to kill me if I told you." Victoria's laugh was perfect, surprised, concerned, sympathetic. "Richard, you can see what we're dealing with here. She's having some kind of psychotic episode, making up elaborate stories, breaking into private spaces. I think we need to call Dr. Matthews immediately." Maya felt the familiar crushing weight of not being believed, but this time she had weapons Victoria didn't know about. She held up her phone, which had been recording the entire confrontation. "Play it back," Maya said simply. "Listen to what she really said when she thought you couldn't hear." Mrs. Chun appeared in the doorway behind Richard, her own phone in hand. "I have the full recording as well, Mr. Richard. Every word." Richard took Maya's phone with trembling hands and pressed play. Victoria's real voice filled the room, cold, calculating, discussing Richard as a mark and casually planning Maya's disappearance. The loving woman Richard had planned to marry was revealed as a stranger who felt nothing but contempt for him. Victoria's mask finally cracked completely. "Richard, you have to understand." "I understand," Richard said quietly, his voice heavy with pain and anger. "I understand that everything between us has been a lie. I understand that you've been stealing from me while I planned to make you my wife." Maya watched Victoria's face cycle through different strategies: denial, justification, even a brief attempt at seduction. But Richard was no longer the trusting man who dismissed Maya's concerns. The evidence was too overwhelming, the betrayal too complete. "The Morrison deal," Richard said, realization dawning. "You convinced me to delay the proposal submission. You said I needed more research, more preparation, but you were buying time for your clients to submit competing bids." "Richard, business is complicated. Get out," Richard said, his voice deadly quiet. "Get out of my house now, before I call the police." Victoria's composure finally shattered completely. "You have no idea what you're doing, Richard. My clients don't appreciate interference. If you report this, if you try to prosecute me, they'll make your life very difficult. Business can be dangerous when people don't cooperate." Maya felt a chill at the implied threats, but Richard stepped forward, his fear replaced by protective fury. "Are you threatening my family?" he asked. "Your family?" Victoria laughed bitterly. "She's a foster kid, Richard. Damaged goods from the system. And that old woman is just hired help. They're not your family. They're just people you feel sorry for." Richard's expression hardened in a way Maya had never seen before. "Maya and Mrs. Chun are more family to me than you ever were. At least they actually care about my well-being instead of plotting to destroy it." Victoria grabbed her purse and moved toward the door, her elegant composure completely gone. "You'll regret this, Richard. All of you will regret this." She pushed past Mrs. Chun and disappeared into the library. Moments later, they heard the front door slam and her car engine roar to life in the driveway. Maya realized she was shaking. Mrs. Chun put a gentle arm around her shoulders, while Richard stared at the surveillance equipment with the expression of someone whose entire reality had just collapsed and reformed. The police arrived within an hour, followed by FBI agents who specialized in corporate espionage cases. Maya found herself giving detailed statements about everything she'd observed, her notebook and photographs becoming crucial evidence in what the agents described as one of the most sophisticated domestic corporate intelligence operations they'd encountered. Richard sat beside her during the interviews, his presence steady and protective. When Agent Martinez asked if Maya had been in danger, Richard's jaw tightened visibly. "Victoria threatened to make her disappear," he said. "She talked about hurting both Maya and Mrs. Chun if they interfered with her operation." Maya felt a strange sense of validation hearing Richard defend her to law enforcement officials. For the first time in her life, an adult was fighting for her instead of questioning her credibility. After the agents left with boxes of evidence from the hidden surveillance room, the three of them sat in Richard's study while he tried to assess the damage to his business. Maya and Mrs. Chun brought him tea and sandwiches he didn't touch, both women understanding that he needed time to process the scope of Victoria's betrayal. 2 years, he said finally. 2 years of sharing everything with someone who is actively working to destroy me. He looked up at Maya, his eyes filled with a mixture of gratitude and guilt. "And you tried to tell me multiple times. I dismissed you like a child making up stories." "I am a child," Maya said softly, "and I was making accusations that sounded impossible. I understand why you didn't believe me at first." "No," Richard said firmly. "You were protecting our family, and I failed to listen when you needed me to hear you." He paused, seeming to realize what he'd said. "If you want this to be your family, Maya, if you want to stay here permanently." Maya felt tears prick her eyes. "You still want me here, after all this drama and chaos?" "Drama and chaos?" Richard looked genuinely confused. "Maya, you saved my business. You probably saved my life. Victoria was planning to marry me, steal everything I've built, and then disappear. Without you, I would have lost everything and never understood what happened." Mrs. Chun spoke up from her chair near the window. "Maya has shown the kind of loyalty and courage that family requires. She protected you, even when it put her in danger." Richard nodded, his expression growing more certain. "I want to make this official, Maya. I want to adopt you, if you're willing. I want you to be my daughter legally, not just a foster placement that could end when social services decides to move you somewhere else." Maya looked between Richard and Mrs. Chun, seeing genuine love and commitment in their faces. For the first time in her 17 years, she was being offered something she'd never dared hope for: a permanent home with people who valued her for who she was, not just tolerated her out of obligation. "I'd like that," she whispered, then cleared her throat and spoke more strongly. "I'd like that very much." Mrs. Chun smiled, pulling out her phone to take what she called the first photo of our real family. As they posed together in Richard's study, Maya realized that sometimes losing everything: foster placements, temporary homes, false security, was the only way to find what you'd been searching for all along. Victoria's trial began 6 months later. After FBI investigators had unraveled the full scope of her corporate espionage network, Maya testified on a Tuesday morning in early spring, wearing a navy blue dress that Mrs. Chun had helped her choose. Richard sat in the gallery, his presence giving her strength as she faced the woman who had tried to destroy their family. Victoria looked different in the defendant's chair, smaller, less polished, her perfect composure replaced by the hollow-eyed appearance of someone whose carefully constructed world had collapsed. She barely looked at Maya during the testimony, as if pretending the teenager didn't exist could somehow undo the damage her confession had caused. "Miss Santos," the prosecutor said gently, "can you tell the court what you observed on the evening of November 15th? Maya had practiced her testimony with victim advocates, but speaking in front of a courtroom still required every ounce of courage she'd developed. She described discovering the hidden surveillance room, documenting Victoria's activities, and finally confronting her with Mrs. Chun's support. The defendant threatened you directly?" the prosecutor continued. "Yes," Maya said clearly. "She said accidents happened to foster children all the time, and that she would make me disappear. She said she would hurt Mrs. Chun too if we interfered with her operation." Maya watched the jury's faces as she described Victoria's casual discussion of violence, her complete lack of remorse, her cold calculation in planning to use Maya's potential disappearance as a tool for further manipulating Richard. Several jurors looked visibly disturbed by the testimony. Victoria's defense attorney tried to paint Maya as an unreliable witness, troubled teenager with a history of placement disruptions who might have misunderstood sophisticated business conversations. But the recordings spoke for themselves. Victoria's own words, captured clearly on multiple devices, left no room for misinterpretation. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours before returning with guilty verdicts on all counts: corporate espionage, identity theft, conspiracy to commit fraud, and making terroristic threats. Victoria was sentenced to 12 years in federal prison, with restitution orders that would strip her of all assets acquired through her illegal activities. After the sentencing, Maya felt a strange mixture of relief and sadness. Justice had been served, but she took no pleasure in seeing another person's life destroyed, even someone who had threatened her own. Richard found her in the courthouse hallway, his expression proud and protective. "How are you feeling?" he asked. "Different," Maya said thoughtfully. "Like I finally have a voice that people hear." The experience of testifying, of having her observations taken seriously by law enforcement and legal professionals, had fundamentally changed how Maya saw herself. She was no longer the quiet foster child whose concerns were dismissed by distracted adults. She was someone whose insights had real value, whose careful attention to detail could make a difference in the world. "Your voice helped save our family," Richard said, "and it helped protect other families from Victoria's schemes. Agent Martinez told me your evidence led them to at least 3 other similar operations." Maya smiled, feeling a sense of accomplishment she'd never experienced before. Her habit of watching and documenting skills, developed through years of uncertainty and instability, had become tools for protecting the people she loved. "I want to study criminal justice in college," she said suddenly, surprising herself, with the certainty in her voice. "I want to help people who can't protect themselves." Richard's smile was radiant with pride. "I think you'd be excellent at that, Maya. You already are." The adoption finalization took place on a sunny Thursday morning in Judge Harrison's chambers, exactly 8 months after Maya had first whispered about the door behind the painting. Maya wore a white dress and carried a bouquet of yellow roses, the same flowers that had welcomed her to the mansion, now carrying entirely different meaning. Richard had surprised her the week before by asking if she wanted to keep her original last name or take his. "Santos is who I've always been," Maya had said. "But maybe I could be Maya Santos Blackwood? Keep both parts of my story?" Judge Harrison smiled as she signed the final papers. "Maya Santos Blackwood, you are now legally and permanently the daughter of Richard James Blackwood. Congratulations to your family." Maya felt the words settle into her heart like missing puzzle pieces, finally finding their place. Family, permanent, daughter, words she dreamed of hearing but never quite believed could apply to her. The hidden room behind the portrait had been completely transformed. Richard had asked Maya what she wanted to do with the space, and together they designed it as her personal study, a place for homework, college preparation, and the criminal justice research that had become her passion. The surveillance equipment was gone, replaced with bookshelves, a comfortable reading chair, and a desk positioned to catch the afternoon light. "It's perfect," Maya said, running her hands along the smooth wood of her new desk. A hidden room turned into something positive, instead of secretive. Mrs. Chun had officially moved into the mansion's guest suite, her role evolving from housekeeper to family grandmother by choice rather than blood. She'd started teaching Maya to cook traditional Chinese dishes, their shared kitchen time becoming a meditation on patience, precision, and love expressed through careful preparation. Cooking is like investigation work, Mrs. Chun had explained while teaching Maya to fold dumplings. You must pay attention to small details, follow each step properly, and trust the process even when you cannot see the final result. Maya's confidence had grown dramatically over the months following Victoria's arrest. She spoke up more in class, joined the debate team at school, and started volunteering with a local organization that helped children in foster care. Her experience had taught her that quiet observation and careful documentation could be powerful tools for change. Richard had begun consulting Maya on his business decisions, not because she understood corporate finance, but because her ability to read people and situations had proven invaluable. She'd helped him identify 2 other potentially problematic business partners, though thankfully neither had turned out to be as dangerous as Victoria. Trust your instincts about people, Richard had told her during one of their weekly dinners. Together, you see things that others miss because you've learned to survive by being observant. That's a gift, not a weakness. The mansion felt completely different now, warmer, more lived in, full of the sounds and rhythms of a real family. Maya's artwork hung on the walls alongside Richard's business awards. Mrs. Chun's plants filled the sunroom with green life. House that had once felt like a museum had become a home where people actually belonged. Maya kept a new journal now, not for documenting suspicious behavior, but for recording the small daily moments that made up her new life. Mrs. Chun teaching her to break bread, Richard helping with calculus homework, the 3 of them watching old movies together on Sunday evenings, arguing good-naturedly about which genre to choose next. One evening, as they sat in the library where everything had begun, Richard looked up from his book and asked, "Maya, do you ever regret staying quiet for so long before speaking up about Victoria?" Maya considered the question carefully. "No," she said finally. "I needed time to observe, to gather evidence, to find my voice. Speaking up too early might not have worked. Sometimes the right timing matters as much as having the truth." Richard smiled. "Wisdom beyond your years, as always." Maya smiled back, feeling grateful for a family that valued her thoughtfulness instead of trying to change. 1 year later, Maya stood in the same library where she'd first noticed the shifting portrait. But everything had changed. The painting of Richard's father had been rehung properly, no longer concealing secrets behind its frame. Sunlight streamed through windows that Mrs. Chun had opened to let in the spring air, and the room smelled of the jasmine tea Maya had learned to brew perfectly under her grandmother's guidance. Maya was 18 now, accepted to 3 universities with full scholarships for criminal justice programs. Her personal statement had focused on the power of careful observation and the importance of believing young voices when they speak truth to authority. The admissions counselors had been impressed by her maturity and her clear sense of purpose. Today, she wasn't thinking about college applications or future career plans. Today, she was focused on Emma, a 13-year-old girl with familiar, watchful eyes who sat curled in the corner of Maya's study, clutching a worn backpack that contained everything she owned. Emma had arrived through the same foster system that had brought Maya to the mansion, placed with Richard and Maya after her previous guardians had dismissed her. Concerns about her foster father's inappropriate behavior, the social worker had specifically requested the Blackwood family. Knowing Maya's background would help her understand what Emma was experiencing. "She barely speaks," Ms. Rodriguez had explained during the placement meeting. Classic signs of trauma and hypervigilance. The other families found her too withdrawn, too intense. They said she watched people too much, made them uncomfortable. Maya had smiled at that description, remembering how many adults had similar things about her own observational habits. Now, watching Emma examine the transformed hidden room with careful attention to every detail, Maya recognized the survival instincts she'd developed herself. Emma was cataloging exit routes, safe spaces, potential threats, behaviors that looked antisocial to adults who'd never needed such skills. "The bookshelf used to be surveillance equipment," Maya said quietly, settling into the reading chair across from Emma. Someone was using this room to spy on my dad, to steal information that could hurt our family. Emma's eyes sharpened with interest. What did you do about it? At first, nothing that worked. I tried telling adults, but they didn't believe me. I was just a foster kid making accusations that sounded impossible. Maya opened her current journal, filled with college preparation notes and family memories, instead of suspicious observations. So I started documenting everything, taking photos, recording conversations, gathering proof that couldn't be dismissed. Did it work? Emma asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Eventually, but the most important thing was finding adults who actually listened when I finally had evidence to share. Maya gestured toward the window, where Richard and Mrs. Chon were visible in the garden, planting vegetables for the summer. Real family doesn't dismiss your concerns just because you're young. Real family fights for you when you need protection. Emma studied Maya's face carefully. You really think they'll listen if I tell them what happened in my last placement? I know they will, Maya said with absolute certainty. And I'll listen too. Sometimes having one person believe you is enough to start everything changing. Maya pulled out a new notebook and handed it to Emma. This is for you, if you want it. Not for documenting dangerous situations. Hopefully, you won't need that here. But for writing down good things, new experiences, moments when you feel safe. It helps to remember that not every detail needs to be evidence of something wrong. Emma accepted the notebook with trembling hands. Thank you, she whispered. That evening, as Maya helped Mrs. Chon prepare dinner and Richard reviewed Emma's school enrollment paperwork, Maya reflected on how dramatically her life had changed. The shy, watchful girl who'd arrived with a single suitcase had become someone confident enough to guide another frightened child towards safety and belonging. Her phone buzzed with a text from her college advisor, confirming her acceptance into a summer internship with the FBI's Crimes Against Children unit. Maya smiled, knowing that her journey from observed to observer had led her exactly where she needed to be. Later, as the family gathered for dinner, Emma still quiet, but beginning to relax in her chair, Maya looked around the table and felt the deep satisfaction of belonging somewhere permanent. She'd learned that the quietest voices often carried the most important truths, and that finding people willing to hear those truths was the foundation of real love. Sometimes the smallest whisper creates the biggest change, Maya wrote in her own journal that night. Who believed in your quiet strength when it mattered most?